Hello and welcome to Analysing Avatar. We are making our way through the third series of Korra, Change, and we have reached the 8th episode of the series, which is called The Terror Within. This episode... It's a shame that we don't have, for a title like that, you want to release this podcast in October. I think we're releasing this podcast sometime in April. I don't think this could be any further from... Halloween if it tried. But anyway, Terror Within. This is the episode, for those of you who don't remember, where the gang are all hanging out in Zaofu because it's safe, and it turns out not so safe. Zahir and his cronies get in. They try to kidnap Korra. The attempt gets scuffled. Scuffled. It gets, I don't know, whatever word I was looking for there. It gets turned on its head by the gang who save Korra. And rescue her, and Zahir gets away with his cronies. And then it becomes, well, how did they get in? And we start trying to unravel the mystery of betrayal in Zaofu, the safest city ever, which, again, the second they said that, I was like, even like 3 episodes ago when they first introduced it, it's the safest possible city. I was like, yeah, right. Even on my first viewing, I was like, yeah, right, lady. I don't believe you for a second. Anyway, it turns out the culprit was Ai Wei, who was secretly working with the Red Lotus. And then he escapes as well before they can get any goddamn answers as to what in the world is going on. And the episode ends with a bit of a betrayal as Su Yin lets Korra go out after Ai Wei because she's all frustrated about the situation. Very much against her sister's wishes. Throws their relationship potentially into some hot water for the sake of that revenge. So yeah, really, really good episode, I think. I really enjoyed it, but I'm very curious as to your thoughts on this one, particularly. So how are you feeling about it?
I'm just loving it. I thought it was fantastic. I thought the fight scene was great. Mm-hmm. I thought it was just really entertaining. The lava stuff, the way the metal was being used to fight back as slates. I thought that was great. I thought the espionage, the trying to discover who it was fun. I thought, the scene where he got away was pretty gripping. And I you know what I really loved, Dan, and this will come as a surprise to no one.
Yep.
Well, that was a fucking Team Avatar, Dan. I think more than any other point in this series, these guys are going away together as a Team Avatar on their own little mission. They're all together. They're not separate. They're, I don't know how many episodes it will last, but there's no love triangle bullshit to get distracted with. We kind of haven't, Marco's still pretty scared of him, or at least he was, but that seems to have sort of faded over time. I'm not bothered if we don't need to go back to that, in my opinion. You could just go, oh, it was awkward at first, but they spent quite a bit of time together by this point. So I'm loving it. I thought the episode itself was great. I thought the fight scene was good. I like the fact that it's kind of pretty much most of it was a fight scene. I think that's when the budget allows, I think that's quite cool.
Sure.
Lin and Sarit, they've got their, they're going to be at loggerheads. That's quite exciting. Although I kind of don't really know when we're going to deal with that in a way. Because that suggests maybe we'll have a whole, I don't know, it just seems weird, if we're going to cut to them fighting or annoyed with each other, or maybe that's going to be the opening scene of the next one. I don't know. I kind of feel we didn't, because we didn't really do anything with Opal leaving. I could almost wish, that guard, maybe they'd set up that him and Opal were quite close, and the notion was he wanted to get her out the way first. But as it stands, you probably could have just started this episode with, oh, Opal's gone. But equally, it didn't detract either. I don't think we needed more time on anything, but that's probably the only element of the episode that felt a bit sort of, I don't know, tacked on. Because she just sort of goes, and we spend quite a fair bit of the beginning chunk of the episode. But great fight scene, entertaining, a good little investigation, and a Team Avatar at the end. I'm a happy Chris, mate. I really enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, me too. I think this is a really good one. I mean, it's one of those things where it is a piece of a very good season. It's hard to specifically compliment things in this episode that are unique to this episode. I think it's doing the same things well the season has been doing well in general. I just think that is just generally true. Like, you know, the writing is tighter, the characters are more engaging, the situations are evolving in ways that feel natural but fascinating. There's loads of tension. There's a good little mystery going on in terms of like what really is going on with Zahir. You know, there's the surprises along the way. I mean, I think when I watched this originally, and maybe we'll start here in terms of breaking it down in more details. Aiwei was a bit of a surprise to me the first time, and I think one of the smart things they did was make Aiwei kind of a slightly comedic character. He was sort of like a stick in the mud type character that could tell when you were lying. So they do a great joke at the beginning of this episode where Marco is like, not that I'm not having fun sat at the table with you, Aiwei, and Aiwei's like, I can tell you're lying. That was this episode, right?
Mm. Yeah, it was. Yeah. Because that's Opal's goodbye meal.
Right, you're right. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So I'm just like, I was just super into that joke, that idea, but it's also like so light that you kind of go like, oh, cool. You just like the character because you just think like, well, he's just a nice, fun character. It disarms you a bit. So his sinister twist, his turn, considering how many times they've had seemingly good characters turn in this show, right? And how many times it's been so on the nose that you've seen it months in advance. Do you know what I mean? Like, that counselor from the first series, whose name I always forget, I didn't at the time, but like now, and her mentor last year from the Northern Water Tribe, her dad's brother, Unalok, like he turned on her as well. Like these guys were basically, showed up with a t-shirt saying, "Shh, I'm the villain." Like, do you know what I mean? Or watch out for this guy with an arrow pointing to their heads. Do you know what I mean? Like it was pretty
particularly last year, particularly the brother. He might as well have turned to the camera.
Yeah. So when you've got a character like Aiwei, that I think on my first viewing I was a little not dismissive of, but like certainly didn't consider him to be a potential threat. I was just enjoying him as a fun little character in Zaofu that had a bit of a quirky, slightly grumpy personality, maybe a little bit dull, but he had a really interesting function. And even as you get further into this episode and they find an excuse to really use his lie detecting powers, I'm like, oh, brilliant. Got a great use of him. They've not wasted that skill of being able to tell when someone's lying. They've made use of it here in the story. Thumbs up show for making a character have a purpose. Like, not a big hurdle to clear, but one season 2 might have struggled with. That's my weekly jab at season 2 out there. Season 2 out the way. So when he does have that turn, I genuinely found that quite surprising. Which again, for a show that has hung a bell on every potential villain character historically, I was very pleasantly surprised by that. And for your first viewing, I guess, Chris, how did you feel the same way, or did you see it coming somehow? Were you ahead of me? That's my question.
No, surprised. Obviously, you start to see it coming within the confines of the episode, like towards those moments where, where you start going, well, this guy doesn't seem right, and then you go, well, who's planning everything? You kind of get there. As Fenric, who's the guy you love?
Oh, Varric.
Varric. As Varric says it, you're there with him, sort of saying it. But no, completely in terms of it being him, predicting when the episode starts. I think it's definitely a surprise, and it's nice because the show starts to put it together for you as well. It gives you the hints of like, well, hold on, this guy's only 18, so. Who fits the right age?
Yes.
Who could they have on the inside and stuff? I think that twist is done extremely well for sure. And is he thinking about it? Does he fight them? I can't remember. Is he in the fight scene? I'd need to go back and look at it unless you were paying attention to that this time, knowing the twist that it was him.
Good question. I didn't think of that. No. No, I'm looking in the text now of it and being like. No, it doesn't look like he's not mentioned in the text of the fight scene. No, he's not mentioned in it. I've not got the episode up.
So,
Yeah, but I guess the thing with that is it's the way this character is so kind of perfect, because you sort of go like, oh yeah, he's not. Who is he? He's not a combat guy, is he? He's not going to be out there fighting, is he? He's going to be, he's an advisor. He's like a political. You don't expect him to be at the front of any battle, so you're not questioning his absence. But obviously, it makes perfect sense. It's the same as you said with that kid. Like the clues are there if you wish to put them together yourself, and that is something that any show that's or a movie that's doing like any sort of mystery or investigation or whodunit type thing should keep in mind is the clues, the evidence should be laid out prior to the reveal, so that the audience do have the ability to put it together themselves. Are you listening, Sherlock? BBC's Sherlock?
Yeah, we've talked before about how for shows with a murder mystery or any kind of mystery, the ideal surprise is something that makes complete sense, but something that still takes you by surprise, and that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
Like finding that balance is really tricky, and we always praise shows when they do that because of how hard it is to do.
Yeah, agreed. And they give Asami this week like 6 lines, which is just wow, good work, guys. She says things like, "I don't think they're going to get far. Look, and there's no way to cross that moat." And let's see what else have I got from Asami here. And look at this, as she hands someone a book. And then she says later on, she goes, "What do you mean?" Brilliant. Just good stuff. But towards the end, she does get to say the sentence, "We don't know."
Yeah, but to be fair, I'm pretty sure if you looked at Marco's lines, they're probably equally.
That's a great question. Let's find out. Let's do it. Marco. Right. Marco. No, nowhere near. He gets to say actual things. But you don't think it's weird how young he is? Because Marco gets to be the detective. Marco puts it together before.
Oh, that's true. You're right.
Yeah, do you not think it's weird how young he is? How did he ever get mixed up with this group? Like, he's the one asking the questions. We need to get in there and find some evidence that links Aiwei to Zahir. Otherwise, Sue won't believe us. Like, he's saying also, he's got opinions. He's not just expositing, like, lines like Asami is, which is just, like, absolute, just, like...
Yeah, that's fair. You're right.
Wow. It's amazing. Justice for Asami, man. I continue to say it. I continue to mean it. So yeah, I think we're agreed that the Aiwei stuff is one of the stronger points of this episode. It does make up the back half of the episode, sort of that kind of fun montage of them interviewing people with his powers, but of course then you start to realise that actually that was a bit untrustworthy because the guy actually that betrayed them was him. But of course then they go investigating. We've got this cool sequence where they go into his house and they find the secret cellar, which has vibes of Hiroshi Sato's house when they found the secret cellar. When they were trying to prove that he was working with the Equalists in the first season, had real vibes of that, which I liked. I loved that we got an opportunity for Marco to be detective-y, even though he gets some nudges from my brain. What is happening? Varric. But he still mostly puts it together himself, which I think is just a good use of a character with a skill. He has that skill, use that skill. Bolin gets to use his accuracy firing rocks skill in the fight, so it's like everyone gets to do a thing. They all have an ability. Korra, when Aiwei is escaping, gets to use her newfound metal bending skills. Although, admittedly, right, and I think it was Nadia that pointed this out, but she's bang on. Mako's a little tetchy during that. Like, he's like, "Come on, he's getting away," and Korra's like, "I'm new at this. Back off." She's right. Back off.
No, I thought
back off, Mako. She's working as fast as she can.
I thought Korra was a little tetchy. He's only like, "Come on, let's do." I'd have to rewatch the scene, but I was like, "Okay." When Korra sort of snapped at him,
he's like, "Come on, he's getting away."
Okay. Well, he's right. He was.
Yeah, but she was. Oh, you know what? You were right. She needed that nudge. She was going slower than she could have. She really needed someone to say, "Do it faster." That's very helpful.
That was helpful.
When I'm doing something quickly against the clock, I really need somebody behind me going, "Do it faster!" It really just works, you know. I just do it faster. You know.
Am I just obsessed with Team Avatar, or do you agree that the ending point of them all sort of running away is nice?
No, it is nice. I think, but to be fair, they've been together for most of this season, but they've been in a wider group, obviously. They've been with Tenzin, they've been with, now they're with Lin. You know, they've travelled around with a responsible adult, which, by the way, I actually think makes a lot of sense. It's worth noting. Having a Team Avatar sort of assigned guardian stops them from getting into sort of trouble that the original Team Avatar got themselves into regularly. You know, having an adult in the room is a good idea, generally speaking.
So here's a question then. Does Lin look bad because actually she seemingly is making a choice based on her own desire for revenge and her own anger, as opposed to a choice that protects the Avatar?
Yeah, I assume you mean Suyin, not Lin.
Oh, sorry,
just clarifying for the listeners. I knew who you meant, but I just want to make sure that they knew. Yeah, so I think you're right, and I think that is going to be a big point of tension going forward. And I think they've set that up brilliantly, because those two have only just started to get on speaking terms, and Su Yin is arguably throwing that away in order to be. To get that sort of like that information, that range. It shows her as being quite ambitious, I think. It shows that she has got a little she wants to get what she wants to get sort of streak in her, like, and she's happy to use others to get her way. You know, that's what it demonstrates, is a slight personality quirk of hers, is like, yeah, I can use the Avatar for my needs. The same way she did it when Korra arrived. Go train my daughter in airbending. You know, you can stay here and do it. Like, she you know. I don't think it's necessarily that she's a bad person, but I do think she's very demanding and she expects a lot of the world. And, you know, look, she's achieved an awful lot in her life. She has this whole city she's running, so it's obviously gotten her far, but it's not the most commendable one, as you said, as it puts Team Avatar in harm's way. So, yeah, I was very excited to see them together and, you know, off on an adventure minus an adult. And I liked that they didn't just do that, they did that, and it's created dramatic tension between two other characters. Because you could have just arbitrarily done it, and I would have been like... Because would you have questioned this episode if the adults had all gone, "No, Korra, you can't do that," and then in the night, she'd gone, "Psst, Marco, Bolin, we're going anyway." If she'd have just gone, that would have worked exactly the same as a story.
Yeah, it would have worked, yeah.
But by doing it this way, they've told us something about Su Yin, and it's created tension between her and Lin that I'm really excited to explore. Really, really good stuff. I think it's when everything's working on all these layers where every single story choice could be a simple one-dimensional thing, but they've made it a multi-layered thing that's teaching us about another character, creating dramatic tension for two characters going forward, and it sets our story in motion all in one breath, by making a complicated, difficult choice for the characters, not the simple, easy, the story needs it to go that way sort of choice. So yeah, I'm big into it. I think it's great. I think, and yeah, like you, I was excited to see Team Avatar. I don't think that's been as big a concern for me in general, because they have been together all season, and that was kind of enough for me. I felt it last year more when they were constantly, literally separate. But I felt it a lot less this year because they've been a gang anyway.
Yeah, but like you say, they've all been doing their own things. Like, we've had some Asami and Korra time. We've had some Marco and Bolin time. Yeah. You know, Marco and Bolin, they found their family, so that was a separate thing. You know, there's been different pockets. So just the notion, I don't know if we've ever seen them on their own going off to do something. Obviously, maybe a little bit in Series 1, but wasn't Tenzin with them then? But was Tenzin not with them when they...
No, they defined his wishes to go and deal with the Equalists. They went out on their own, and they were like, "Well, how are we going to get out? You know, we can't go on Naga." And Asami was like, "Well, I've got the vehicle for us." And they were all like, "We're the new Team Avatar." As they drove around in Asami's car, they made a real point of it. It wasn't great. It wasn't bad necessarily, but it was a bit on the nose as we addressed at the time, I think. But yeah, Tenzin was not with them. Tenzin very much didn't want Korra messing with the Equalists, if memory serves.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. But since then, pretty much no. There's always been divides and separations and Korra went off last year on a big spiritual journey, and they were often out doing their own thing, getting involved with being a mover star or being a detective or whatever. They all had very much their own thing they were doing, which was interesting. It just wasn't executed. Because the thing is, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a different approach. In theory, on paper, and going, well, this is going to be a little different to Avatar. They're not one gang always traveling around together. Sometimes they'll be separate and living their own lives. Fine. They're older than those kids from the first show. They're going to want their own lives, careers, whatever. I don't mind that. That's absolutely fine. On paper, there is literally nothing wrong with that as a choice for this show. It's just the way they executed it wasn't great, because they never really weaved it back together and got moments like this across a season. This is a perfect balance for me, where for most of the season they've been sort of in each other's orbit, but not exactly experiencing the same story, but close enough to constantly be able to talk to each other and interact with each other. Then they've had this moment now where they've been thrust off into the sort of final act of this story as we head into the last, 4 or 5 episodes, whatever's left. I'm not sure exactly how many are left, but handful of remaining episodes together on an adventure. Start them separate, bring them together for the overall plot, and have them deal with that together. And then start next season, they could be sort of a little bit scattered again, and then bring them back together to solve whatever that problem is. Perfect way to do it, in my opinion. Super excited to see them together. And obviously for you, considering that one of your bigger issues last year was the lack of a team Avatar, I can understand why that last moment was a very exciting one for you. I mean, what would you like to see them doing now? Do you want to keep them separate for the rest of the series from the adults, or do you want to see the adults get back into the fray also? Like, when I say the adults, I mean Lin and Tenzin specifically.
I think it'd be quite nice to have the adults link up themselves. Maybe, so Lin and Lin go over to Tenzin, and then we explore, because I'd quite like to see Tenzin and Lin interact with So Lin there. I think that could be quite, entertaining. And maybe, the adults then go on, the adults basically follow them. To try and find them, and it's one big epic fight, maybe. I don't know. But I want them to be together for a while, and I want them to be doing their own thing, I think, for at least a couple of episodes, to be honest, I think.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's a reasonable request, and hopefully the show will deliver. I'll be honest with you, I don't 100% remember the flow of things from here. I know where it ends. I know what our last couple episodes look like, but I'm a little bit fuzzy on the journey from. If the end of the series from here is if this is step A and the end of the series is C, I am kind of missing B a little bit from my memory. I don't 100% see how the path links to where I know we go. Does that make sense? So the next episode or two, I'm going into a little bit blinder than normal. But I guess it'll be probably that thing though, where once the episodes actually start, I'll go, oh right, yes, this is what we're doing. All right, it'll come to me as I'm watching it, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it will.
Yeah, usually the way. Let's talk about some of the elements of this. Let's talk about some of the combat stuff then. So, I mean, were you surprised to just suddenly see Zahir in Zaofu? Because the episode doesn't initially make a point of having someone yell, "How did they get in?" That comes up in the wake of their attack. Were you surprised, excited? How did it all play out for you?
Yeah, I thought that was fine. I was maybe a little surprised, but then he the last episode, I don't know if it was the last or the one before last, because this show sort of bounces around plot-wise a little bit, but, that episode ended with him going, she's in Metal City. This one, he's turning up in Metal City. That makes sense. And to be honest with you, even though I was a little surprised, it was quite pleasantly surprised, because I'm like, oh, we're going right in. We're there's no, well, kind of, apart from the Opal stuff, we're going right into them attacking. That's cool. And them, to be fair, they're not attacking initially, are they? They just want to steal Korra. To be fair to them, Dan, they didn't.
Yeah, it's just some mild kidnapping.
Yeah, just some mild kidnapping. But they were looking to get in and out without any casualties.
You're not wrong, which I thought was an interesting choice, because it tells us they're not just a simple kill the Avatar sort of villains. They're after something specific from her. And also, the choice actually not to even fight her head on, but actually just knock her out. It almost says they're a little scared to deal with her directly. So they knocked her out, because that's the way they only thought they'd be able to get her, simply, basically. I really liked it. I also thought I really respected the choice not to show like menacing shots at the start of the episode from like a nearby cliff top looking down on Zaofu and Zahir being on the outside being like, we've arrived, the Avatar's down there, and then being like, how are we gonna get in, boss? And him being like, I've got a plan. None of that. No build up. I mean, that's obviously a cheesy like 80s cartoon version of it, but like my point like about doing a scene where we see Zahir coming into the city or overlooking the city to set up that was going to happen this episode. No, they're having a normal, peaceful time in Zaofu, and then suddenly Zahir is in Zaofu. It's as big a shock for us, the viewer, as it is for Korra and the gang, and that's really good.
Yeah.
And then obviously we get an awesome action sequence with a lot of really cool ideas built into it. As Chris pointed out earlier, I mean, this was kind of almost like original Avatar level of like creativity with the bending, I thought, and some really cool visuals.
I'd agree.
And a really clear like goal for the fight too. Like they were trying to get out with Korra, they were trying to grab Korra back. They get to the point where they pinned them down, and it becomes this tension of can they set up a very quick like goal of can Bolin stop Sparky Boom Girl with a rock to the FOD prior to Lin and whoever jumping down on them, because they're going to be very exposed if not. And obviously they do that brilliant thing of it, like the tension builds as they're about to jump, and there's that horrible, it's a bit contrived, but it's that whole thing of, are we ready to go? No, don't go. What's that? You said we can go. They do that, which is like a bit lame, but whatever. They jump down, and Bolin's still not taken out Sparky Boom Girl, and she's about to blow them to pieces, and then he throws the rock, and it's his last chance to do it before they're in trouble, and it sort of catches just as she's charging it up, and it blows up midair under their feet. It's super cool, very tense, like a really neat action scene that isn't just people bending at each other. That's what I'm bored of from the last season. Just a lot of people bending at each other.
The whole thing with the lava and the metal slabs as well. Like first of all, the metal slabs are the prison, and then they become the raft in amongst all this lava. It's just really, like you say, really inventive stuff.
Yeah, I like creative bending. I think I think they got a little away from that last season or so, like especially, and I think you accept it with pro bending because it's like the whole idea is it's supposed to be an expression of quite simplistic bending skills because it's a controlled sport with rules and regulations, and obviously you can't just do whatever you like, but then even after that sort of went away, the pro bending thing, and we started having these like more open fights, they were still not particularly creative. It was just, I throw a rock at you, I jump out of the way because you've thrown water at me. I'm going to throw fire at you. Okay, you're going to throw a rock at me. Like, it was a lot of that, basically. A lot of people just blasting each other with the element in question. And I don't know. It felt like sometimes they were just, like, hitting a quota of, like, well, we need to have a fight scene. Whereas here, the fight felt purposeful because we learned something about Zahir, like, his plan. Even if it doesn't seem it, like, the fact he didn't just come and attack Korra, he wants something from her, and she needs to be alive for whatever it is he's up to, and that he's not necessarily willing to, like, he's willing to, like, just be sneaky about it. He doesn't need to get into a fight. It shows him as being a slightly more threatening and slightly more, sorry, there's a really large fly that's been buzzing around for like a minute or two now, and I'm worried it's so loud, it's so large. I'm worried it's on mic, but there's nothing I can do about it. It's also really annoying, so I'm distracted. Also,
it's probably not picking up as much as you think it is. It might be, but it's probably not. The other day, Jess was watching TV while we were recording. And I was like, what the hell? That's so loud. And not to her, but just in my own head. And then we finished the recording. And like I made a note. I'm like, 55 minutes. So we finished the recording. I listened to the file. I go to 55 minutes, ready to go downstairs and be like, listen to this. I couldn't hear a thing. I was like, oh, okay, never mind. Just didn't, yeah.
The mics, to be fair, with mics we invested in all those years ago when we started this, have really done us proud. They're good mics.
They're very the reason, and this doesn't help you because it might mean the fly can be heard. They're very directional.
Yes.
So the fact that basically like the sound of the telly, obviously the doors were closed and stuff, but the sound of the telly is the other side to the side I'm speaking into really like helps. I've mentioned a few times. I was going to say to your point. Yes, but I agree with you. Fight scenes are always better when there's meaning behind them. But you know what? There's also a world for, I just want the cool visuals and things to go bang. And actually, the visuals were different and really cool this week for the reasons we've discussed, lava, metal, and all that stuff. So yeah, I thought the fight sequence was fantastic. I've mentioned a few times that sort of the opal thing is a bit tacked on to the beginning. Do you think that's fair? What's your view on that?
There's a world where I do get that criticism, but because of the way this episode is structured, as we're just carrying on with our plot about Zaofu, and then it is interrupted by this. You do need them to be doing something at the beginning to pull that off, right? Whether it's sending Opal away or more metal bending training, which is what they do. You need Zahir to be interrupting what seems like a plausible, normal plotline set in Zaofu. Does that make sense? Because you want that surprise. Whereas if
it does.
The other version of this episode replaces that stuff with the stuff I was talking about earlier, like the building up of tension of, they might be in the thing. We know they're there. We saw him overlooking Zaofu, and when maybe you see a grate to move, so in the background, see, that we focused in on that. That clearly there's some movement, that sort of thing. I don't like that idea personally. I would rather feel like for a minute that this might just be an episode about this, Opal leaving and just continuing some of these plots in Zaofu, like, before we go, oh no, this is going somewhere very different. I'm okay with that because it maintains the surprise and it still fulfills a part of that story. If Opal just vanished, there would also be a part of me going, what? No fanfare? Like she didn't see the family before she left. She's just gone. Like she just this week she's just not there anymore. Like, okay, she didn't say goodbye. Like we didn't see her saying goodbye to Bolin, like her mother. Like I don't know. I that's a weird gap. So we managed to achieve two things with the way they handle Opal at the beginning of this episode.
That's true, actually. If Opal and Bolin didn't get a goodbye, I'd be the first to moan about it. That's a very good point.
Right? Yeah. So like and they do. They get a moment where they talk about whether we'll see each other again. So I was okay with it. I was okay with it. I understand the impulse, and I don't disagree with the criticism, but I just think what we gain by having it structured that way outweighs what we arguably lose by it being structured that way. If that makes sense, that's kind of where I'm.
Yeah, no, you've won me round on that. Like, because just the Opal Bolin, they didn't do anything too groundbreaking on that for me. But yeah, you've won me round because you're absolutely right. If that wasn't there, I'd be bitching away about that. So.
Yeah. I think I would too, though. You wouldn't be on your own. I'd be a bit like, come on, we just spent 3 episodes or whatever, like teasing these two being like having a connection and stuff. No goodbye, because you can always assume her goodbye with her mother happened off screen, because she's not a main character. Neither is Su Yin. She's an important character to the plot this season, but you could argue away that having happened off screen. You just go, well, they had that conversation privately. It's not relevant to the plot. But the story of the season, or one of the stories of the season, has been Bolin and her relationship. So we need that piece. Do you know what I mean? That's been way more essential to the season and the plot so far. So yeah, I was glad we had it. But speaking of the beginning of the episode, one of my favorite moments of this entire episode remains a Varric moment. Of course it is. Varric's airbending detector. Which is a device that detects airbenders, but it only works if they blow air into it. They have to airbend into the device for it to work. That's the best thing I've ever seen in my life. It's great.
But they didn't just use him for comedy this week. Like he propelled the plot forward when he was like, well, if I was looking for whatever the word he's used, he uses. Like, if I was pulling off, what does he say? Well, you've got the dialogue. Sorry, that was really barking. You've got the dialogue. You boy with the script. What day is it? Is it Christmas? That's going to seem really random in April. We're recording this like literally in the gap between Christmas and New Year. Here's actually, I've got a side question on that. Actually, Dan. A conspiracy, yeah. I thought that was very good and really funny the way he describes it. But Marco's just like, you mean like you did with me? He's like, yeah, exactly.
And then he says something like, remember how great that worked? And then he's like, well, not for you, but for me. Like, it's brilliant. It's really well written. But yeah, he does exactly that. I've got a
question, Dan.
Yes, go on.
I've got an off-topic question about that gap between Christmas and New Year. But it could get us demonetized. So would you rather us discuss it separately on a different podcast, Dan, rather than being demonetized again?
I don't know when they got so strict. 3 of the episodes this season's mad. No, screw it. Go on. What's the question? We'll handle it as quickly as possible.
What do you call that gap between Christmas and New Year?
I don't have a name for that gap. It should have a name because it is this weird, awkward nothing time where like there's no one's making progress with anything. You're sort of sat waiting for New Year's to happen, but it's not there yet. It's still a week away because Christmas has just happened. Yeah, this is sort of like nothing time in between the 2 holidays, isn't it?
Because I had someone describe it the other day as the gooch, and I was like, sorry, what?
That's great. Yeah, I had a feeling that might be where that was going. Because when you said... Because between the question and your comment about it being demonetized, like, the only way this makes sense now is if it's someone called it the gooch.
I was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, you know, the gooch.
The holiday gooch.
I was like, I don't know if that's a thing. So it's just, yeah, it's curious.
Yeah. Oh, from now on, Chris, I shall refer to it as the holiday gooch. Beautiful, good work. No, I'm adopting that. That's fine. It's good. I liked it. Dear Lord, what? How do we do this?
What other notes have you got? What other notes you got for the episode?
One of the notes I made actually was about the noises being made in this episode from the animals. So I'm currently dog sitting essentially. I'm house sitting, but I'm looking after 2 dogs. Pabu's noises when Pabu is alerting Bolin and Mako to Korra's kidnapping, which is a fun moment in the episode in general. But Pabu makes a lot of like squeaky little noises. Dogs reacted to that. They were like looking around for whatever animal was making that noise. Interestingly, Naga, which makes a more dog-like growly bark, nothing. No reaction from the dogs at all. So yeah, whoever does I assume it's D. Bradley Baker, but I actually don't know that for sure. I'm just assuming that because he's usually the voice of the animals in these shows. But a very convincing sort of Pabu, like it's clearly like that was fire ferret, whatever you want to call that animal, because the dogs believed there was some sort of rodent nearby and were looking for it, but not at all reacting to the existence of the polar bear dog, which was making some very dog-like noises. And I will say, these are the kind of dogs that bark at other dogs. If there's another dog barking, they start barking in like sort of sympathy. That's sympathy barking. So yeah, just an interesting note, I thought. Shall I look up who voices them? Let's see. Was it D? Is D back?
Yeah, let's give him a shout.
Yes, it's D. Bradley Baker doing Pabu and Naga. So yeah, great job. Both good. Just one convinced the dogs. The other one didn't. Other moment I really enjoyed was Bolin thinking that the lava bending was really cool. It gave me sort of Soccer vibes, because Soccer would do that sometimes where the villain would be doing something really awful to them, but Soccer would be kind of like, that's kind of cool though. Like Sparky Boom Man. You know what I mean? Like it was that... Yeah, Bolin being intrigued and excited by the lava bending really made me laugh.
Yeah, and just the way it was like, I mean, it's bad for us, but
Yeah, exactly. And then I looked at as well. I made note of. I like this idea, and again, just making use of all the characters and their skill sets. Korra's plan is to go after Zahir. But if you're thinking, well, how? Well, Naga can track the scent. brilliant. Well, she's actually no, she's going after Aiwei, not Zahir specifically, but the assumption is that Aiwei is going back to Zahir. And the idea that Naga is going to be the way they do that, great use of the characters they have and the skills that they bring to the table. I just like that. I just think that makes a lot of sense. So yeah,
agreed.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else to discuss. I mean, again, the visuals are really good. I liked the lava effects. I think those are cool. I think they supplemented that with some CG, but I think it looked really good. The fight scene. I mean, we knew we were going to have less to talk about this episode because such a chunk of this episode is fighting, and that always ends up leading to less plot and therefore less stuff for us to discuss. But I thought it was a really solid episode overall. I'm very excited for the next step. Have you got any theories about where any of this is going? Any theories about Zahir yet? I mean, I know you're suitably intrigued, but any thoughts on where we're actually heading with this?
No, and I'm kind of like that. You've got to assume he wants to harvest her power or some shit like that, haven't you? Or just wants the Avatar. Maybe he doesn't like. He's so wanted to be an airbender all his life. He doesn't want anyone else to have the monopoly on bending. He doesn't like the fact that the Avatar. Why should the Avatar get to be whatever bender they want to be? When the rest of us have to sort of, not get what we want, something like that. Maybe, if forced to guess. But I'm enjoying. Like, I try and keep a real deliberate. I just like watching this show, and I've always, I think Steven University was, we almost devoted a segment to predicting and stuff like that. Whereas I think with this show, I just enjoy watching it. I think it's more pleasurable, not necessarily trying to theorize. And I think it's a different show in terms of mythology. It's got less. Like this, for example, is just a mystery of the backstory of the villain, as opposed to Steven Universe, which felt like mythology building. So that show lends itself more to guessing. But I assume if I was to guess something like that, like he's wanted to be an airbender all his life, he couldn't be. He resents the fact that the Avatar's got the choice. Something like that.
Interesting. Yes. Well, yeah. We'll have to wait and see, won't we? I'm very excited to keep going. Would you, Chris? Well, wait. It's a morning time podcast for you. So am I saying the thing?
Yeah, you're saying the thing.
Okay. Well, guess what then, Chris? It's time for us to triv it up.
I'm gonna give you some trivia.
I think we've made it our own, and I like it.
Me too. Big
I think we put our own little vibes on it, and I think that's fine. Right, so it's time to triv it up, as stated, which means we're doing some trivia. There's not a lot of trivia for this episode, but a couple of little pieces that I thought were interesting. Of course, this is the, you'll be sad to hear, Chris, this is the last ever episode. Won't be the last ever, actually. They might have then gone back and done some of the others at a later date, but this was the last episode of this series to debut on television.
Really?
It was pulled following this episode, and the remaining 5 episodes premiered exclusively online through digital platforms, and then eventually.
And that was the case for Series 4.
What's that, sir?
And was that the case then for Series 4?
I believe so. Yes, they did eventually get airings. It looks like on Nicktoons. So let me just have a. Actually, that's a good question. Let me just pull up the dates 1 second, because I can check this, because it looks like they did eventually air on Nicktoons at a later date. But I don't know how much later.
Wow. This series is so good, though. Like, this series specifically is so good. That's such a shame.
Yeah, but I guess the ratings just weren't there, which is a shame. You're absolutely right. So it looks like they were airing on TV about a month after release from this point on. So they would throw them out like on a late night time slot. To be honest, at the time, I remember feeling like, that's okay. That's not the end of the world, because it's a show for a more adult audience. Most of its audience probably are watching through catch up and the Nick website anyway. You know what I mean? It's a little dark for a show airing on Nickelodeon. Making it online exclusive isn't the end of the world. Its fan base were very online heavy anyway. So I remember not feeling like it was the end of the world, just that it's a shame that going online only probably means budget stuff going forward, or maybe even that this might be the last season. You know, I remember feeling very concerned about what it meant for the show, not so much what it meant specifically for this season, or, you know, how viewed it was. Like, I was just a bit like, it's not a good sign. It's not a show of confidence, is it, halfway through a season to pull it from airing regularly on television. So, like, the Terror Within, this episode aired on the 25th of July, 2014. Then a week later, on the 1st of August, when you would have had the next episode, instead of it airing on Nickelodeon, it just went up on the website. It didn't get a broadcast until October the 6th, 1 month after that. And then it looks like they kept that pattern up for the remainder of this series, where the episodes aired about a month later on television, presumably in some sort of small slot out of nowhere, you know, like out on the edges of the schedule, like, you know, either late in the evening or early in the morning, or just, you know, out of the way of the main lineup. And the episodes have been made available online. Bummer, if I'm being honest. Just a real bummer.
Yeah, that's a massive bummer. Yeah, for sure.
I'd have to do some research, and I'll do some research because next week is the first episode that was aired online specifically. I'm going to see if I can do some research as to what Nickelodeon said at the time. But it looks like they kept the same pattern for season 4 too, because the first episode of season 4... oh, wait, 1 second. Is this season 4? Yeah. Did we go... Wait, that can't be right. This is saying... 1 second. What? Did we... I'm sorry, I'm scratching my head here, Chris, because it looks like... Did season 4 just air straight after season... Like, this is... Season 4 just... It just went into it.
Really?
Yeah. So this episode we're watching right now aired July 25th. The episode that follows it and went online August 1st, a week later. And let's just keep going. Then we go to August 8th. Yeah. August 15th. August 22nd. The final episode of the season aired on August 22nd. And then the first episode of Book 4 aired on October 3rd, same year. I don't remember that happening.
I was going to say, that seems like something you'd remember, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It does, doesn't it, Chris? I will do some research about the airing of these seasons, because I don't recall that happening. But looking at this, that's what it says. Fascinating. And that seems to have carried on through season 4, from what I can tell. So they made 3 and 4 together and then aired them as one series, which does make a certain amount of sense. Because obviously the original series of Last Airbender were made in blocks of 20-odd episodes. And this is only sort of 12 episodes per season. So it makes a certain amount of sense. And it also actually makes sense that even though they felt the need to pull it from television, they still kept making a season 4, because season 4 was made. Season 4 was in the can, so they just dumped it week after week across the rest of the year and the beginning of the following year. But I'm just going along on the episodes, and yeah, it carried on through December of 2014, and then into the new year, it looks like. Wow. I don't even know where to start with that. Okay.
To clarify, people, that we won't be doing that because we got a season of Rewind reviews in between.
Yeah, absolutely. Very strange though. I'm really surprised by that. But it looks like maybe the last episode got an actual air date, like on TV maybe. Yeah, it looks like the last 2 episodes went out together on television on the 19th of December.
Oh, that's cool then. At least it got that.
Yeah, but wow. Okay, I will look into this because I do not remember the 3rd and 4th series airing together at all. So that's well, I'm going to have to go do some research between seasons. But anyway, yeah, bit of a bummer. We've discovered this information together. So this is the only episode in which Pili, the Sparky Boom Girl, is seen generating normal fire. Usually we see her specifically focus on her explosion and making ability. But this time she did. It's the first time we saw her not do that. Lynn's use of the phrase "third-eyed freak" mirrors Katara's when she described Combustion Man in The Runaway. So that phrase came back. Fun little callback to the original series. And then this episode marks the first time that seismic sense is used by an earthbender wearing footwear. So all previous uses of the technique involved being barefoot to increase the user's connection with the physical earth when doing it. But in this episode, someone is pictured doing it with shoes on. Now, it could be. I wondered, because Toph eventually got shoes that didn't have bottoms, if memory serves. Do you remember that? They didn't have the flat bit at the bottom. I wondered if it was related to that, but I haven't had a chance to go back and look and verify. So we're just going to go on the logic.
Yeah, but I did enjoy that. I was like, hey, Toph, that's, again, that's my reference is always to the pitch guy, isn't it? That's the thing from the first show, but
yeah.
Yours is something else. I can't remember what. And maybe for some it's Leo, that meme of Leo from Once Upon a Time.
Yeah,
where it's like, I get that. But yeah, I did think that was cool.
It's Captain America. Captain America. I get that reference.
Yes. I meant to make a note of that to say that I thought that was cool, that visual, and bringing that visual back.
Yes, agreed. 100% agreed. So, Chris, it's time for our recently renamed segment, Give Me That Feedback.
Give me the feedback, give me the feedback. I want to hear the feedback that we missed before. I wish I could think on the spot of words that rhyme with feedback. Give me the feedback.
Hi, it's Dan here. Welcome to Feedback from Last Series, which has recently been named Give Me That Feedback. Dear Lord, that song was something else. Maybe your best work yet, Chris, if I'm being honest.
I would go the other way.
I mean, I guess it depends what you're looking for in a song, in a podcast like this. I just think, I'm trying. You know what? You've slightly stumped me though, because what does rhyme with feedback? Cadillac. Wisecrack. There you go. You could have done wisecrack.
Yeah.
Prozac.
Maybe chat. You can make chat. Give me the feedback and we'll have a little chat. Maybe.
Yeah. Give us the feedback and, Back to the Future, we'll use it like an almanac.
Nope. It's not that.
It's not that. Well, I'll tell you what, Chris. Oh, okay. Give me the feedback. It'll be so exciting. You'll have a heart attack.
I like the fact that we've got a system where whichever one of us is doing the early shift doesn't do let's triv it up, and then 10 minutes after you yell triv it up, I'm going, give me the feedback. The neighbour's like, what the fuck?
Well, so give us your feedback. We'll be like a pyromaniac.
No, I think just give the feedback. I think.
Anyway, we've done it. So here's the feedback. So this comes from Super Grover on the last series. Now, last series, Chris, I think we both may have made this comment. I'll take credit for it because I don't 100% remember. We noted that it didn't make a lot of sense that Unavatu, which is the Vatu Unalok merger, this dark avatar they created, didn't make sense that they could bend multiple elements, because we saw how Rava and Wan got multiple elements, and it was by having those powers granted to them by the turtles. Unavatu, Dark Avatar, whatever he was, didn't have that. So it was like, how does he bend other things? It looked like he was earthbending and all this stuff. We had feedback from Super Grover that says, I believe that even after he fuses with Vaatu, Unalaq is still only ever shown waterbending. There are a few shots that look like earthbending, but since they're at the South Pole, the ground is mostly ice. This episode has lots of problems that you've correctly identified, but I think the bending of Unavaatu stays in line with the rules of the show. Now, I was like, wow, that's crazy, really interesting, and went and double-checked. They are correct. There is no shot of Unavaatu, Dark Avatar, whatever you want to call that character, bending anything other than water or something that could arguably contain water, like the ground, which is made of sheets of ice.
That's cool. That's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, really cool. Well, look, this is what giving that feedback's all about, in my opinion. Just telling us when we got it wrong.
That and the song, yeah.
That and the song. So yeah. Thanks, everyone, for your comments. If you'd like to give feedback, I don't have anything to add to that. They're correct. I checked. It's right. That's exactly right.
Well, just a thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. That's awesome.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, so if you, like Super Grover, have identified something we got wrong, and that will not be hard. It's not a challenge. You can head over to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/nothingbutstatic, and leave a comment under the episode in question to tell us otherwise, or you can send it us through the old school email system, mail@nothingbutstatic.co.uk. So that's that. You can also support the podcast in a number of ways, Chris. So first of all, if you're already at the YouTube channel because you're telling us what we got wrong, well, you can subscribe. You can like it. Or if you haven't managed to think of a thing we got wrong, and let me be honest, that's very easy. Very easy. You wouldn't have to look far. So, but if you've not managed that, for whatever reason, someone already got to them first, did a categorized list, and you went, there's none left for me, then you could just tell us what you had for breakfast. We're getting a lot of those still. We like those very much. Keep doing it. Any comment at all on the YouTube video boosts our algorithm and lets other people know what we're up to, which is good. You can also support us by, of course, heading over to your podcast platform of choice, wherever you're listening to this, if it's iTunes or Spotify or any of those places, whichever one you use, and interacting with our podcast there. They all have their own different systems. Some of them have review systems. Some of them have systems where you can give us like stars or hearts or pokes or whatever. Do that. That also is a big help. We appreciate that very much. What else? Oh yeah, the Patreon. If you'd like to hear episodes of this podcast 1 week ahead of their normal release, of course, head over to patreon.com/nothingbutstatic, where you can hear next week's episode, which is titled The Stakeout, right now, you lucky dogs, for as little as $1 a month. That also gives you access to our Discord, where you can also leave us feedback and comments and things.
Too good. We're too good to you.
Mm-hmm. I think... Oh, Rapho. Go support Rapho. The piece of art that's at the start of this podcast on the video version and is the cover art for the podcast on all the audio versions came from a brilliant artist called Raphodraws. Rapho Draws, Draws, who you can get on Instagram as Raphodraws. They're also on Tumblr and Twitter and YouTube and all this place. But the best thing to do is go to launchlinks.io/u/Raphodraws. That takes you to a page that has links to all of Rapho's various socials and places where you can support Rapho, including a Redbubble account, I believe, that has like various bits of merch with Rapho's art on it. There's a bird has clearly landed nearby and just made the most bizarre noise I've ever heard a bird make. I will say this, right? I recently moved to Australia, for those who aren't aware, and I will say there is a lot more just wildlife in Australia in general. I have an Australian friend who was really surprised at the lack of animals that just exist in London. I was like, it's a city. You don't really get animals in a city, but no matter where you are in Australia, there is a shit ton of wildlife just around you at all times.
It would certainly seem, based on your experiences, that sort of the stereotypes are true, because it does feel like every episode of the podcast now you're like, whoa, big animal of some description.
Yeah. Like, it's crazy. It is crazy. And the other week we were out in a park, like in a gardens, and we sat on a bench, and there was just a fucking parrot landed next to me. Like this incredible... it's called a rainbow parakeet, if you wish to look the bird up. Or if you head over to my Instagram, that Dan Doolan, you can see a picture of it. I took a picture. Just this incredible, beautiful parrot, and they just landed like a fucking pigeon would while you were like in the UK. Do you know what I mean? It's pretty incredible. If I'm being honest with you, it's fitting into a stereotype, that's for sure. But anyway, yeah, there was a weird noise a few minutes ago. That was a large bird of some description. I do keep seeing cockatoos up in trees as well, and I haven't had one come down close enough to take a picture of yet. But I'd very much like a cockatoo to come down and let me take a picture of it because they're really cool. But yeah, wildlife with Dan. Come back next week for more of that. Let's see what other things.
Let's hope he finds his cockatoo.
You know, it's funny. The other day, Nadia came back and she was like, "I've had a snake incident." I was like, "Oh my god, really?" And no, what she'd had was a lady said, "I saw a snake go into that grass. Don't go into that grass." She named the kind of snake it was. It's a poisonous kind, so it's definitely a no touchy. I think someone recently described them to me as a death noodle, which I thought was a fun way to describe a thing that could kill you. And then, Nadia then walked a bit further down the street and saw a sign before a park that was warning snakes here. Just tread carefully, basically. Don't just stand in long grass or whatever. Or go climbing a tree. And she was like, "I had a snake incident." I'm like, "Did you physically see a snake?" She's like, "No." I'm like, "Okay. So a woman telling you she saw a snake earlier does not count as you having a snake incident. Second-hand snake incidents kill no one."
No, I think Nadia got told about a snake. Is that story?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, she did not see a snake herself. It's worth noting. Anyway, thanks everyone for listening. I'm so sorry. Just derailed the podcast right at the end with some awful nonsense. But it's a good time. I hope you all come back next week, even though that would put potentially some people off.
To see which animals Nadia's heard about.
Well, Chris, secondhand snake stories do kill 0 people a year. It's a serious concern. Anyway, thanks everyone for listening. I'm just going to end it because this will just go on forever if I don't. So that's been everything for this week. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And we'll see you in a week's time when we sit down to review The Stakeout.